Hello, it's Lauren. Today's video is going to be all about achieving the ultimate no makeup makeup. The kind of makeup that it's so faint and light that you almost can't tell where it starts or stops, and it all just kind of becomes part of your face. I feel like a lot of times it's easy to overdo it on the no makeup makeup, and then it becomes like obvious makeup. So the goal with this look is to make it look as seamless and natural and like fresh, I woke up like this as possible. So my face is already prepped, and I'm going to start with the Chantecaille Future Skin in the shade Vanilla. And I'm going to take just the tiniest amount of this all over my face. And now that that's off of my fingers, I'm actually going to put on these lovely little hair clips to keep my hair out of my face. So I chose this particular foundation because it is incredibly sheer and gel-like, and it leaves your skin looking luminous, fresh, but still like skin. And that to me is kind of the entire goal with no makeup makeup, right? So this really just will help to cut some of the redness. You can see, because my skin is somewhat sensitive, anytime I touch my skin, it flushes. So if I'm wearing a more sheer foundation, you will see my flushing cheeks. But I think this is a really beautiful foundation if you're looking for something really light. Next, I'm going to use the Shiseido Syncrho Skin Concealer. I wear the shade, what is it? 201 Light. And what I like so much about this formula, it's a really great color match for my skin, but also the formula itself is pretty thin and it's got good coverage. And I also like that this one doesn't really seem to like bunch up on my skin. If you look really close right here, almost everyone has this first little fold of skin, wrinkle, whatever you want to call it. You'll even see it on babies. So it's not that you have like some crazy wrinkle that you can't get rid of. That's just, it seems to be a very natural occurrence for most people, including infants. So don't be too frustrated when your concealer gets in there and if it creases up. I think it's also important to note, when you're applying your concealer, if you start a little lower down where you're going to typically have more discoloration, you're not going to get as much product heavy in that fold, and you're not going to have the like creasing issue. I love that concealer though. It's so just undetectable. It's beautiful. And I do have a little bit more redness peeking through on the center of my face, so I'm just gonna dot a little extra concealer and coverage on. All right, so now before I set my face, I am going to set it lightly. What I'm going to do is use a little bit of the Westman Atelier Face Trace. This is really just great for adding some extra definition to the face. You don't have to use it super heavily. You can use it very lightly and have a very softly sculpted effect. I do think that this is such a subtle step, but it really does add to that extra little like pop. And especially when you're doing kind of a no makeup look, I think this is a great thing to add in. So I'm actually, because this will help to kind of blend the two together in a sense, I'm going to use that same brush that I used for both my foundation and my concealer. It just makes for a very, very soft, subtle application. You know, I know a lot of people, you know, they want to use so many different brushes and that sort of thing. I think the reality is most people don't have like as many makeup brushes as someone who does YouTube for a living or, you know, whatever. And I think a lot of people do this kind of thing where you use the same brush for multiple parts of your face. I think you do have to be careful. You don't want it to get muddy. So like say if you were to use like a blush and then also use it for a bronzer and they're very different colors, you're going to end up with more of a muddy effect. But I think for the sheer sake of like a very seamless skin application, I think it's totally fine to use the same brush for that if you're trying to make your contour really disappear and be kind of invisible. Now, if you wanted it to be like a really hard pop-in contour, you would want a different brush. But I think for this type of look, for this no makeup makeup, for the kind of makeup where you want it to be seamless with your skin, I think it's totally fine to use the same brush. So now I'm going to take some of this Jillian Dempsey blush in the shade Poppy. And another reason why I like this, it's also a very thin texture, and the way that it sits on the skin, it almost becomes part of your skin, which is kind of my preference for a cream blush. I think sometimes they can be a bit too thick. I always want something that is very, very soft, very thin, and just gives you that little kiss of color. I personally like a more like peachy kind of shade on me. I think it just tends to be a bit more flattering than like a hard pink. Sometimes though, I think one of the biggest exceptions blush-wise, color-wise to that though is the Rare Beauty Soft Pinch Liquid Cheek Color in the shade, is it Happy? Yeah, it's Happy. And that color makes me look like I just went for a run. It's like, it's a pink, but the way that it sits on the skin, it just looks very, very natural. And I really love what it does. And so you can see with this, I'm just kind of building this up until I get the right wash of color. Because I don't want it to be really hard or garish. I just want it to be very soft. So I'm going to take that trusty old brush. What I am going to do is I'm going to buff off some of that so that if there's any dark contour color left on there, it won't be on my cheeks where I'm trying to do this. And you'll also notice I'm kind of using the side of the brush, which didn't necessarily get as much product. And I'm just kind of tapping out where that blush color sits. So now that we've got our cream products all done, what I'm going to do is lightly set more so the center of my face. That is where I have, you can see more of my pores, and I tend to get a decent, like kind of decently oily throughout the day. So what I'm going to do is take my MAC Studio Fix. I wear the shade NC25, and I'm going to just take a MAC brush and start from the center of my face where I get more oily from the T-zone. So right through here, you can tell too that this is a very like pointed application. I am sticking very close to the center of my face. This is a great brush for this. This is the 129S, in case you are wondering. And I'm just gonna kind of build out a bit. End of my nose is a bit shiny, so we'll put some more there. And I'm also going to just lightly powder over my eyelids and my brow bone. Make sure everything is well set through here. And you'll also see, I'm trying to leave a little bit of luminosity around the edges of my face. I think that tends to look a bit more natural. All right, now I'm going to take a very light sweep of bronzer. This is Rhea from Thrive Causemetics. I'm taking a very large fluffy brush, and I'm just going to very softly dust it over my face. I've become a huge fan of bronzer lately. Partially because I've been very diligent with my sunscreen, and my face is so much lighter than the rest of me. I've been wearing a body sunscreen as well. Like, it's an SPF 15 and a body lotion. And on days that like I'm not necessarily spending a ton of time out in the sun, and it's just kind of for my everyday like basic protection, that's what I've been using. But the rest of my body is still so much darker than my face now, so bronzer is babe. All right, so now we've got our complexion mostly evened out, adding a little bit of color back. What I'm going to do that I think is really great to just kind of make it all look really fresh is I'm going to take some of the Jones Road Beauty Miracle Balm. This is the shade Dusty Rose, and I'm going to scoop out a little bit on my nail. And I'm gonna put it on kind of this heel of my palm, I think is what you would call it. I'm gonna rub together like this. It's very, very thin. And I'm just gonna press. Not to disturb what's underneath, but this will give such a beautiful, fresh luminosity to the face. And it just looks very natural. I think that's such a beautiful way to use this product to really just kind of bring some life back to your face. I've said this before in reviews, but Dusty Rose, even though it looks like it could work as a blush, I find that it's just too sheer and doesn't have enough pigment for me. But in the case of bringing some life back to your face, I think that this is an excellent product to do that. So that's kind of how I like to use it. Sometimes I'll make it a little bit thicker on the very tops of my cheekbones, but I think really just kind of making a thin veil of it and pressing it onto your face where you want the light to catch is one of the best ways to wear it. So now what I'm going to do is take some of my Marc Jacobs gel eyeliner. This is the shade Earthquake, and I'm not going to put this on the outside of my eye, and I'm not going to put it on the bottom. The reason I chose this specific eyeliner is because once it sets down, it really doesn't move. So what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to tightline my upper lashes, because this is really going to help them look a little bit thicker and fuller without looking like you're wearing makeup. The other reason why I like tightlining the upper lash line, when you're looking directly at someone, you can see their lower lid, like the inside of their lower waterline, a lot easier than you can on the top. So this really does become like undetectable makeup, but it makes your lashes look thicker and fuller. So let me show you. It's subtle, but it does add just that extra little tiny pop of definition around your eye. And I think that that's a really great way to wear eyeliner for a no makeup look. So let's do the other eye. Ta-da! Just an extra little something. My eyes get so watery when I do that. But I do think it's a step that is worth it. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my Thrive Causemetics palette. I'm going to use the number 3 palette. It's a matte palette, and it's some very nude, neutrally kind of tones. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to start with this very soft kind of bone cream color. And I'm going to blow some of that off because I don't want so much of this that it becomes obvious that I'm wearing it. What I am looking for with this shade, depending on your skin tone, you could use something that's a little bit deeper. I want something that is slightly lighter than my skin tone because it's going to help cancel out some of the discoloration on my eyelid and make it look a little more uniform. You can see the difference between this eye and this eye. This eye just looks a little bit brighter all around. So we're just gonna put a little more over here. And I'm using a very fluffy brush. It's kind of more of like a blending brush, but I love using this type of brush for a very soft and sheer application of color. So now that that's all evened out, what I'm going to do is take this slightly darker shade. This is a really great shade in this palette, especially if you're someone who's a little bit more fair, for this kind of socket shade. So where you would go in with your crease, you'll notice again, I'm using the same brush because this is very soft. You don't need a hard divide between the colors. You want it all to sort of flow. So I think using the same brush, again, in this case, is perfectly fine. So I'm just gonna very lightly kind of half close my eye, find where that natural shadow is in the socket. It's all, this whole look is all about just kind of defining your natural features. And a little bit over here. And really work it out into just kind of nothingness. You want it to be very seamless. And that's also a great reason to use a really soft, fluffy brush like this. It's just going, the way that it presses those pigments onto the skin, it's a much looser kind of brush. Those fibers are more flexible than like a shorter bristled brush. So you're going to get a much softer wash of color. And just for a tiny bit of added definition, I'm going to take a slightly smaller brush and go into that slightly deeper shade that we used before, and very lightly, very subtly pop it underneath there. That will help to make your eyes look a little bit larger. It's also really great for kind of camouflaging out where that little first fold is underneath the eye. And if you are like myself, around my eyes, I tend to get kind of bluish pink. And so using a shade like this really helps to kind of camouflage that out. So the next step, I'm going to use this NYX brow pen. And the reason that I want to use this is because I can create very soft hair-like strokes. If you are someone who has very, very sparse brows, you don't have a lot of hair coverage to begin with, I think one of the best things that you could do is go in with a powder product, either like an eyeshadow or an eyebrow powder, and kind of create a brow shape, and then go back over it with one of these pens, because it's going to give you that illusion of depth of an eyebrow with that extra hair-like definition. And I think for a powder like that, you would want to use something that's slightly lighter than your hair color, and then use a brow marker or a pen that is the same shade as your hair color, because having that powder behind it is going to create the illusion of some hair there already. So because I have quite a bit of eyebrow naturally, I am going to just use the brow pen. And this one is really, really nice. It is very, very fine, so you can create really, really tiny hairs. I find that the wear on this is really, really nice. And I also have found that like this particular product, once you brush it through, that's when it really starts to look more natural. And you can see there is a subtle difference between the two. It still looks very much so like brows, it looks like my brows, but they're a little more defined. So my brows tend to fall down throughout the day. If yours tend to stay in place, you wouldn't necessarily need this step. I am going to use the Instant Brow Fix from Thrive in the shade Audrey, and I'm going to wipe off a lot of that excess because really I just want to lightly catch those hairs with the product and just fluff them up and hold them in place. This adds a little bit of extra definition to those individual hairs also. I think when it comes to no makeup and brows, you want to be able to see through those hairs a little bit. If you do like a really hard pomade, it's going to look more like obvious makeup. But if you can see little gaps of your skin through the brows, that's when it's going to look a bit more natural. People that don't fill their brows in, if you look at them, you can see usually their skin through their brows just a little bit. So I think that's one of the secrets to making filled brows look more natural is maintaining some of that transparency through to the skin. And actually, I want to make this even a little bit softer. So I'm gonna just take a clean spoolie and kind of feather back through there just a little bit to kind of work some of that product out. This is kind of a side note, but I have an old makeup wand. I really liked the shape of this makeup wand, and I cleaned it off and I just bent it, and I use this for my brows. I use this anytime I get mascara marks on my skin. Highly recommend just save one of your old mascara wands, preferably one that's not silicone, so you can actually bend it and get into where you need to a little bit easier. That's like my little tip of the day. So now, if you know me, I love mascara, and I am so guilty of really piling it on, but that's not natural looking at all. So for a more natural look, this is what I think you should do. I'm going to use the Victoria Beckham Future Lash. This has a really tiny little wand. This is a tubing mascara, so it wears really, really well. But this particular mascara, it allows you to get really, really close to that lash line. And it's really, really dark, but it's also not like a thick, chunky mascara. And actually, I'm gonna do something that I don't really ever do anymore, and that is curl my lashes before I put on mascara. I don't do this anymore because it makes my eyelashes obnoxious when I put on mascara the way that I normally wear it, which is very, very heavy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my little handy dandy eyelash curler. This is a Kevyn Aucoin. I'm going to fit my lashes into it and very gently crimp. Very, very subtle. And then I'm going to do that and then slightly rotate it so it's a little bit further away on that outer corner, and then do one more little tiny crimp. And actually some of my outer corner lashes are just so long and flared that they didn't catch, so I'm gonna make sure I get those. And this is, I mean, I think most people like to curl their lashes. I just personally don't normally do this step because it just ends up being way too much. But because of how I'm going to apply my mascara today, I think this is a great step. So I'm going to take that Victoria Beckham Future Lash Mascara, and what I'm going to do is really concentrate this product close to the base of my lashes and just very softly feather through the ends, so there's really not a lot of product on the tips of my eyelashes. So that added a subtle definition. I did make one little tiny bump there, so I'll have to flake that off. But it adds a little bit of extra depth and definition around your eyes without looking super obvious like makeup. It has a very soft, fluttery appearance. You can definitely build this mascara up, but for the sake of this video, we will not be. All right, so now we need a little bit of something on my lips. So what I'm going to do is create a very soft, subtle, kind of contoured effect, and then use a gloss that's similar to my cheek shade that we applied today. So what I'm going to use is Kackie from Thrive. I am obsessed with this lip liner. I think it is the perfect lip contouring shade. I do think for this look specifically, I'm going to have to use it very, very light and buff it out with my finger, but let me show you, and I think the results are really kind of worth it with this one. It adds just like the most perfect little bit of contour, a little bit of definition to your lips. It's not really like a hardcore lip color if you put it on in this manner and you really just softly diffuse it out. I think it is like so perfect. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of the lip serum in the shade Kind, which is a very like almost perfect shade match for the Jillian Dempsey Poppy Blush. So that's why I wanted to kind of coordinate. I think it looks very natural when you do that. And so I don't want to make a super heavy application of this. So what I'm going to do is dot it on. And sort of like smush it into that lip liner and blend the two together. And then I'm going to apply a bit more. I love these two because they sort of like plump your lips in a way that like subtly fills in those lip lines a little bit. And I'm actually, as I kind of sit back and I look at this, I want to soften my brows just a tiny bit. We've got some good definition, but I don't want them to look severe. That's better. And I actually am going to do one more thing. I'm going to take a white eyeliner and very lightly run it on my inner lash line on the bottom. And this is just to very subtly cancel out some of that kind of natural pink in my waterline. This will really help to make my eyes look a little more awake, a little bit fresher, without necessarily looking like makeup. And you'll notice you can really build that color up, but I just did a very soft line of it. You can even use your finger to kind of smush it and smudge it out a little bit so it's not so hard looking. But this is my no makeup look. This is the I woke up like this, maybe she did, maybe she didn't kind of look. Let me know what you think of it. I think that this is a very soft, natural, pretty, fresh look that doesn't necessarily look like makeup. Obviously my lips are a little bit glossy, but I would wear a balm even if I didn't have any kind of makeup on my face at all. So I really love this kind of look. The lashes are a bit of a break for me, I mean, with my normal lash routine. But I think it's really pretty and fresh, and especially if you're someone who is going after that kind of no makeup look, I think this is a perfect way to achieve that. So if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to my channel. my channel just hit 1,000 subscribers and I'm so excited because that means that I can officially monetize my channel. So thank you so much if you are one of my subscribers. I can't wait to see where we go from here. I'm really just kind of, you know, going along and enjoying what I'm doing and having fun and sharing things that I like, sharing little tips and, you know, pearls of wisdom I've picked up over the years. And so thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.